come wherever you are. Wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where her feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's soft play. If revelation is every morning, God's recreation all through the day. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Namaste.
Good morning, people. Welcome to Livermore. Welcome to the 35th or more annual Good Friday Witness, and the service. After the service, we will walk down to the gate where there will be dance and liturgical dance stations across along the way. And after the service and after this liturgical dance and the direct action. And also, I'd love if you would sign your names to the address list for future contact. And if you're planning on getting arrested, please sign the CD list so that if by some chance we get a court date, we can all get together and plan strategy and that kind of good stuff. And if you're thinking of possibly getting arrested, please keep track of your driver's license so that you can be cited out. And people who are expecting to get arrested might seriously want to write down on their head or wrist or someplace handy the telephone number of the National Lawyers Guild hotline, who can help people who get stuck in jail or something.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Isabella Zizi. I come from the Northern Cheyenne, Arikara, and Muskogee Creek tribes. So my family is not from this area. We were relocated in the early 50s, a long time ago, to live here on occupied Ohlone territory. But I live in Richmond, California. I grew up under the shadows of the Chevron refinery. So I understand what the harms to our Mother Earth are every single day. I'm a member of Idle No More SF Bay. I'm also a signatory of the Indigenous Women of the Americas Defending Mother Earth Treaty, and I'm here in placement of Penny Opal Plant, who's not able to be here today, but she does send her love to each and every one of you who are here. So I did want to pay acknowledgement to the Ohlone people whose land that we do occupy, that we do cross on here in the Bay Area, here in Livermore, what's known as Livermore. And I also want to pay acknowledgement to our beautiful mountain, Mount Diablo, what is now called Mount Diablo, as that is a sacred mountain to the Ohlone people, to the indigenous peoples, where lots of prayers and love has been put into those lands. And that the Ohlone people They were here living before colonization had came and crossed these lands and settled into these lands. And so we pay lots of respect to the Ohlone people who still live today, who are still here today, struggling to protect their lands, to protect their rights, to protect their language, for it to continue on. And I wanted to, if it's okay, I wanted to offer a prayer for everyone to start out your day. I wish I could stay with you all day, but duty calls at work. So you're welcome to join me. You can take your hat off. You can stand or sit, whatever you're capable of doing. Dear Creator, thank you for waking every single one of us up today. Thank you for providing this life that you have for all of us. Thank you for this beautiful sunrise that we are blessed today. Thank you for the beautiful energy that it has to offer to all of us, to continue to guide us and protect us for what we have ahead of us on this day, Creator. And we send our love and our guidance to all those part of the nuclear laboratory here in Livermore. We pray for those who have been impacted and affected by these nuclear weapons over the years. We also pray for those who are healing from those traumas, who are healing from those hurts and those harms caused by those weapons, Creator. And that we come in a very good way, we come with a good heart, that we understand that these harms and these destructions and these extractions of weaponry are also very similar to the extractions that indigenous people face when it comes to uranium mining, when it comes to the oil extraction in our territories. And that any harm that is done to Mother Earth is harm that is done to people, especially women. So Creator, continue to protect us, continue to open up our minds, to open up our hearts, and to open up those minds and those hearts to those who are still distracted by weaponry, by capitalism, by colonization. And let us stand with one another and be with one another here on Mother Earth. So Creator, thank you again for all of this life that you have given us. Oh, amen. Thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechechianu kiyamanu v'higianu lazman chazeh. Amen. That is the traditional shechechianu, from the Hebrew meaning, who has given life. It translates, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who has kept alive, sustained us, and brought us safely through this joyous season. The English line from Yerushalayim Shel Sahav, Jerusalem of gold, feels eerily prophetic. Far away beyond the desert, 1,000 suns shall glow. Must the land be both cleansed and poisoned by the fire of a nuclear holocaust? The 10th and worst of the plagues to be visited upon ancient Egypt was the death of the Egyptian firstborn. The Israelites were instructed to mark the doorposts of their homes with the blood of a slaughtered spring lamb, and upon seeing this, the Spirit of the Lord knew to pass over the firstborn in those homes. We know the plagues by many names, among them hunger, war, homelessness, domestic violence, environmental degradation, poverty, pollution of the earth. How many spring lambs must we sacrifice, slaughter, in the hope that the vengeful God of our creation will pass over us, spare us, Take the other children, not mine. How many modern-day pharaohs must we endure? Brothers and sisters, what doth the Lord require of us, but with a righteous heart to sound the shofar, as in Jericho the walls of racism, homophobia, misogyny, Islamophobia, and xenophobia will come tumbling down. Yashraba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, the city of hope, the land of promise for all of God's children. Next year, a Yerushalayim of harmony, of shalom. Shalom uvracha, peace and blessings.
Good morning or evening, friends. Here's your friendly announcer. I have some serious news to pass on to everybody. What I'm about to say could mean the world's disaster. Could change your joy and laughter into tears and pain. It's that love's in me of love today. Don't delay sending yours right away. Hate's going round, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. The force of evil plans to make you its possession. And if we let it, it will destroy everybody. We all must take precautionary measures. If love and peace you treasure, then you'll hear me as I say that love's in need of love today. Send yours in, send it in right away. Oh, hate's gone around, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. I said hate's gone around, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far.
Good morning, friends. Hi. On the way here, I was thinking about the nuclear cross and the religious imagery that I was thinking, which comes to me from time to time, is how much of our democracy has been sacrificed on the altar of secrecy because of the bomb. So when we think of the effects of nuclear weapons. They are everywhere and deep. We know the effect of nuclear war. We've seen pictures of nuclear explosions. We can't imagine the horror, but we can approach imagining the horror if we are quiet and try very hard. We know that there are environmental impacts and health impacts, horrible diseases from every part of the nuclear weapons cycle, from the uranium mining to the nuclear weapons development that goes on right here at this laboratory, to the production labs, to the deployment, so that even an unexploded nuclear weapon is harming our environment, harming our Mother Earth, harming communities and harming workers. In fact, we chose our name, Tri-Valley Cares, Communities Against a Radioactive Environment, so that we could address the impacts not only of nuclear war, but of the unexploded bomb, of the whole cycle that produces the bomb. But yet, those two things don't cover it. Think for a moment about how much we have sacrificed for the quote-unquote need for secrecy. We really have truly sacrificed so much of our democracy on that altar. And my friends, we are here today to reclaim it all. I want to welcome you from Tri-Valley Cares. We are indigenous here to Livermore. We are 35 years old. There are a number of our members, board members, staff here today. And this is the work we do all day, every day. And I want to, thank you. But I want to tell you from that perspective how important it is that you come. How important it is to creating change at the laboratory that you come. How important it is to sustaining us here locally when you come. And so, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. I do want to say a few words about what is going on the other side of this fence, so that you can think about it as you do the Stations of the Cross and approach the gate. And I also want to offer some hopeful signs, some good things that are happening at the end. I don't want you to be depressed when you walk. Right now, here at Livermore Lab, they are designing something called the long-range standoff weapon. Specifically, they are designing the warhead for this new weapon. This is going to be an air-launched nuclear warhead. This is going to be on a new missile that the Pentagon is developing as Livermore develops the warhead. It is designed to hug the Earth in flight, to evade radar, and to explode on an unsuspecting population anywhere in the world. Now, I am not a fan of deterrence. I do not believe in deterrence theory one bit. I think the right number of nuclear weapons is 0. But even if you believe in deterrence theory, this is not a deterrence weapon. This is literally a sneak nuclear attack. Think what that means morally. Think what an erosion that is of our community and of our bonds to each other and to the earth. And think what that does to international relations when other countries know that that is what we are doing here. That is what we spend our money on. U.S. nuclear weapons are slated to now cost $2 trillion. $2 trillion over the next 30 years. I looked up, I Googled, what's a trillion? If you spent $1 million every day since the birth of Christ, you would not get to 1 trillion. So try to imagine more than $2 million spent every day since the birth of Christ. That's what we're spending on nuclear weapons over the next 30 years. Another way to look at it, I found out that there's just about $2 trillion total in circulation in all currency in the United States. That's what we're going to spend over the next 30 years. So another impact of nuclear weapons is theft from the poor, from the needy, from programs of social uplift, to quote Dr. King. All of these are impacts of the bomb, and this is where the bomb starts as a bomb. This is one of 2 nuclear weapon design labs in the United States that actually designs the warheads and bombs. Livermore here in Northern California, so we have a special responsibility, and Los Alamos Lab in New Mexico. So right now they're doing the long-range standoff warhead. For those of you who like numbers, it's the W80-4. I've talked to you about it before. It is in the stage of gearing up where they're starting to prototype and bend a little metal. It is in the stage where it's costing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars every year, including this year. And the system is slated to cost $30 billion. I was talking to some folks who work at the lab and also some folks in Washington, D.C. They told me that Livermore has so much work on this bomb right now and so much money that at the high explosive testing range that these people run, that's in the hills between Livermore and Tracy, they're using buildings they haven't used in decades for purposes that they were not intended for, because they have to house all the workers and press all the parts for the test explosions they do there with a dummy materials, but they're very, 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 very toxic. Only 121 toxic materials in those explosions. So that's what they're doing. The other weapon I want to briefly mention, you've heard me talk about it as the interoperable warhead. It has a new name this year. This is a kind of linguistic detoxification, because interoperable warhead, has the warhead word in it. It's the W87-1 now, but it is still the warhead that weapons designers and people in Washington tell me will walk so far away from the pedigree design, that is the designs that were fully tested before they were put into the arsenal, that it may, not this year, not next year, but ultimately, when they go to certify it, push us to resume nuclear explosive testing in Nevada, which has not happened since 1992. That's what's going on here. Our money, our treasure, the energy of some of the world's best scientists and engineers is being used for new and modified weapons of mass destruction to kill unimaginable numbers of people. And I want to do a final thing. I believe Scott's going to talk about this at the nuclear station, so I will just hold it up so you make sure you get one from Scott or from the table. One thing that we do every year is take the Livermore Lab budget, which is a series of numbers on a page, and make a pie chart so that you can see comparatively who gets what. And some of you have heard me say, it looks to me, this shows my age, like Pac-Man. The blue part is nuclear weapons activities. That's the name of the budget line. That's not what we say are nuclear weapons activities. That's what they say are nuclear weapons activities. It's over $1.5 billion that they're asking for next year, fiscal year 2020. 82% of the budget. You know what they get for science? Here's what they're asking. This isn't like Congress doesn't give it to them. This is just what they're asking even. Do you know what they're asking for science? Not quite 34 million. Not even 2% of the total budget here. is for their budget line that they call science. This is a nuclear weapons, this laboratory, my friends. This is a place that designs nuclear weapons of mass destruction. And this is why we're here to say, transform, stop, halt. Not on my watch, not with my permission, not with my body. I did promise that I would say some happy things. I want to tell you that there's a lot of energy in Congress right now to address nuclear weapons issues. Not as much as there needs to be, not as much as I would like, but more than we have seen in years. Some of it is old-time friends. Some of it is the new energy because of the election and the new Democratic majority in the House. So I've prepared an action alert that Mary and some of the Tri-Valley Cares folks will be handing out. Please take it. Yes, it's a little bit meaty, but it's because I wanted to give you the information about 7 different bills. So you can call 7 different times, once a week. Very briefly, there's the Wine Act. It's in the House and the Senate, and that is to stop a new low-yield, quote-unquote, more usable submarine-launched warhead. There is the restricting the first use, which restricts a president from launching a nuclear attack on his own accord. Right now, our president can wake up at 3 a.m. and in a tweet storm decide he wants to launch a nuclear attack. There is no one who he has to get agreement from. He is the sole authority. The only thing that might safeguard the world is somebody committing treason and not carrying out that order. That is not right. So this would write that and put in a check and balance and say, Congress needs to declare war before you can do a first use of nuclear weapons. Then there's another act that's similar. It's called the No First Use Act. I've been doing this 35 years. I love that it's one sentence, the whole act. It is the policy of the United States not to use nuclear weapons first, period, end quote. That needs co-sponsors. And finally, there is a resolution that was just introduced to support abolition of nuclear weapons and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and that explicitly says the United States is not to spend that money modernizing its nuclear weapons stockpile. In here, there's information about which of our senators has signed some of these. Spoiler alert, Kamala Harris is on none of them, so first call, please. And I also put all of the Bay Area representatives who are already on it, so you can see if yours is or isn't. If your representative is not on it, please call. If you can, call for each one and a different week and ask them to co-sponsor. You know, if your representative is on it, please don't say, okay, I'm done. These people never hear thank you. They will sign other bills if you call and thank them for being a co-sponsor. So when you go home, please add this to your anti-nuclear workload, because it's going to be grassroots pressure that really, really, really brings that energy that's already starting in Congress up, so that it's powerful enough to make a real difference. So this is what you are supporting by being here today. A nuclear weapons-free future for our children, for all children, for all life, and for the earth itself. Thank you.
We're going to be doing a prayer for that end. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Let me demonstrate it, explain it, and for then those who are able, if you would stand, or you could do it sitting. But the Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. So we put this into a prayer. You would start with your body over. And then from that, coming right from the center, reaching out. So we're here. So we're calling. The Lord hears the cry of the poor, and you stretch your other arm out and bring it into your heart. And then from your heart, it's like a vision. Blessed be the Lord, seeing a place of no nuclear weapons. It's a new vision. Let me demonstrate it. You're bent over. We stand, if you're able, bend over.
Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord.
And we try it again.
The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord.
That's beautiful.
Very
That's
nice.
beautiful.
So I have some verses that I'll sing in between, and then we'll do the sacred movement in between those verses. Blessed are the poor, the hungry, and the refugees, for they shall be satisfied. And blessed are those who are imprisoned, for they shall be free. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord.
Once again.
The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. Blessed are the children who are separated from their families, who suffer from hunger and violence, for they shall be cherished. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. Blessed are those who are victims of racism, misogyny, bigotry, oppression. They are precious in the eyes of God. And blessed are we who live on a planet possessed by nuclear weapons, for we shall be free. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. Blessed is the earth, for she shall be clean. Blessed are those possessed by greed and avarice, for they shall be delivered. And blessed are the salt waters that burn us, and the fresh waters that sustain us, for they shall be purified. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. One more time. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the I introduce you to my son Isaiah to read the powerful words of Greta Thunberg.
My name is Isaiah Mertz. I am 8 years old. I speak on behalf of climate justice now. Many people say that children are small and it doesn't matter what we do. But I've learned you are never too small to make a difference. And if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school, then imagine what we could all do together if we really wanted to. But to do that, we have to speak clearly, no matter how uncomfortable that may be. You only speak of green eternal economic growth because you are too scared of being unpopular. You only talk about moving forward with the same bad ideas that got us into this mess, even when the only sensible thing is to do is pull the emergency brake. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. But I don't care about being popular. I care about climate justice and the living planet. Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that the rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury. It is the sufferings of the many which pay for the luxuries of the few. In the year 2085, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there was still time to act. You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done and what is politically possible, there is no hope. We can't solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within the system are so impossible to find, maybe we should change the system itself. We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past, and you would ignore us again. We have run out of excuses, and we are running out of time. We have come out here to let you know that change is coming, whether you like it or not. The real power belongs to the people. Thank you.
This is a protest song based in an old Irish air, and it's called Canticle of the Turning. Oh, stand by. There we go. My soul cries out with a joyful shout that the God of my heart is great, and my spirit sings of the wondrous things that you bring to the ones who wait. You fix your sight on heaven's plight, and my weakness you did not spurn. So from east to west shall my name be blessed, till the world be about to turn. My heart shall sing of the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away all tears, for the dawn draws near, and the world is about to turn. From the halls of power to the fortress tower, not a stone will be left on stone. Let the king beware, for your justice tears every tyrant from their throne. The hungry poor shall weep no more for the food that they never earned. These are tables spread, every mouth will be fed, for the world is about to turn. Though the nations rage from age to age, we remember who holds us fast. God's mercy must deliver us from the conqueror's crushing grasp. This saving word that our forebears heard is the the promise which holds us bound, till the spear and rod can be crushed by God, who is turning the world around. My heart shall sing of the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away your tears, for the dawn draws near and the world is about to turn. My heart shall sing for the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away all tears, for the day draws near and the world is about to turn.
Good morning. My name is Father Ivan. I'm at Newman Hall Holy Spirit Parish. And then on this Good Friday, we just remember that our God is with us in our suffering, with us in our struggle, and that we are never alone. And so we have a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke, chapter 23, 26 to 49. As they led him away, they took hold of a certain Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming in from the country. And after laying the cross on him, they made him carry it behind Jesus. A large crowd of people followed Jesus, including many women who mourned and lamented him. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep instead for yourselves and for your children. For indeed, the days are coming when people will say, 'Blessed are the barren, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' At that time, people will say to the mountains, 'Fall upon us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For these things are done when the wood is green. What will happen when it is dry?" Now, 2 others, both criminals, were led away with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him and the criminals there, one on his right and the other on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." They divided his garments by casting lots. The people stood by and watched. The rulers, meanwhile, sneered at him and said, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the chosen one, the Messiah of God." Even the soldiers jeered at him. As they approached to offer him wine, they called out, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." And above him there was an inscription that read, "This is the King of the Jews." Now one of the criminals hanging there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuking him, said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation. And indeed, we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we receive corresponds to our crimes. But this man has done nothing criminal." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. because of an eclipse of the sun. Then the veil of the temple was torn down in the middle. Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And when he had said this, he breathed his last. The centurion who witnessed what had happened glorified God and said, "This man was innocent beyond doubt." When all the people who had gathered for this spectacle saw what had happened, they returned home beating their breasts. But all his acquaintances stood at a distance, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, and saw these events. The Gospel of the Lord.
Good morning. Friends, we live in an empire. It's both a military and an economic empire. Some people call it a hidden empire with more than 900 military bases around the world. We're not a territorial empire like Rome, which put its armies on its borders and grew from there. Instead, ours is a country that can force smaller countries and regions of the world to agree to so-called free trade agreements that forces them to open their markets to us at the threat of not being able to participate in our consumer-driven financial system. Since World War II, we've created the North American Treaty Organization and many other military treaties that have been able to incentivize a growing number of countries to purchase their military supplies from U.S. companies. And we've used these systems of military treaties to get companies to be, or countries, to become a part of our economic systems. For all of our president's faults, at least he's sloppy enough to display how clumsy we have always used our levers of military and economic might against other countries. In fact, he has so openly bullied other countries that we can see through his words and lies and sanctions against China, Iran, and Venezuela and others, that we can see his policies for what they are: opening salvos in an economic war to get those countries to do what we want them to do, which is submit to U.S. power and to act as vassal states, or to give their petroleum industries over to the Koch brothers or other U.S. forms of corporate domination. Never before have we had a president that is as blatant in their public pressure on other countries to buy U.S. arms. His pressure has created resistance with our European partners, and his open militarism has even forced Russia to pull out of the intermediate range nuclear forces treaties, as we've attempted to create new markets in Europe for U.S. arms sales. As we know, Trump has even pulled out of one of the most successful treaties ever, the Iranian Missile Treaty, also known as the JCPOA, ostensibly to force Iran back to the negotiating table, but now most of the world knows better than to trust us. Even our allies have become wary of Pax Americana. We used to hide such behavior, pretending that we were doing such things to preserve freedom around the world, but these days, our international domination is out in the open. For those of us who care, we know that our nation has broken every single treaty ever signed with Native Americans in the history of our nation. We haven't kept even one of them. We've broken over 700 treaties with Native nations, and we even went so far as to create official doctrines of manifest destiny, new world policies based on the Roman doctrine of discovery, forcing our system of land ownership on indigenous peoples the world over. These days, all we have to do is listen to any speech by John Bolton to hear some of the same talking points of American exceptionalism and colonialism that was once reserved for conversations about keeping Native Americans in their place on the most marginal lands that we called reservations, rather than recognizing them as sovereign nations. Now John Bolton, Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo are all using this same kind of language and expectations about Central and South America, as well as parts of the Middle East. Yes, we live in an empire, even though until recently we tried not to talk about it like that. We used terms like protecting American interests, which has become ubiquitous with expansion of our corporate power in the world, which raises questions for us as people of faith. How do we live as citizens of the empire and as a part of the religious resistance to the abuses of the empire? As Martin Luther King said, we have guided missiles and misguided people. As he pointed out in the sermon Beyond Vietnam at Riverside Church 1 year to the day before he was assassinated, every dollar we spend on the military robs services and help from the poor. So here we are at the lab once again. And once again, we can't pretend that making more and new nuclear missiles will make the so-called nuclear deterrent any more possible than when we have had ideologues such as the liar-in-chief in the White House. He is, after all, the first president of the nuclear race to threaten the use of strategic low-grade nuclear weapons as a part of our regular military options that can be used against any nation at any time. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Fear and power seems to be the primary reasons for the creation of nuclear weapons and the many other aspects of the buildup of our military might. Fear itself seems to be the real reason for the planning, construction, storage, and reconstruction, and even the updating of our nuclear weapons. Power over non-nuclear states is a natural outgrowth of these systems, but the profit motive contributes to this as well, so that we can sell our updated technology to all of those other countries we're trying to get into our sphere of influence. Code words for under the thumb of Pax Americana. Fear leads us to get in line with the empire. Fear teaches us to limit our humanity in the service of the empire. Be afraid, get in line, play your part, and ultimately don't question. And then somewhere in the back of our minds, we hear the words that we've heard from our politicians of every stripe: we are here to protect you. They only have to whisper these words to keep us in line, usually. Even in those times when we wonder what other countries would do with the power and military might we exert around the world, we can sometimes believe or hope that at least America would only use such power benevolently. But twice a year we come here to question whether or not we really are an altruistic empire. When we get uppity and call for the end of the destructive little tools, or call our nation to be really equal with every other country on the planet, the imperial masters may raise their whisper to speak at a room level. Again, to put us in our place. Be afraid, they say, just above that spoken volume. And when they whisper again, we will protect you from those other bullies if you just get back in line. Somewhere deep down, we know America itself is the most powerful aggressor and oppressor in the world. Just ask the people of Venezuela, who is experiencing an open coup at the hands of our own government at the behest of the Koch brothers, whose oil refineries in Texas were created specifically to refine the dirty oil found in Venezuela, and they wouldn't give it of their own free will. We have to go and take it ourselves. It's not just the sanctions that get used in times like these, but the threat of our military might as well. The power that our military arsenals exert against countries that would dare to challenge our economic systems or our foreign policies is immense, and we can't take it for granted that just because it is power being exerted by our own nation, that the power or pressure being used in our name is being used in peaceful or humanitarian ways. No, President Trump's bluster and open threats against others has moved the doomsday clock closer to midnight than at any other time in our nation's history except the Cuban Missile Crisis. Such power corrupts the soul of a country and its leaders. It eventually allows us to rationalize the actions used against others, threats against us. Would our leaders have the same sway to get as many Americans to support the language and rhetoric against Mexicans and Muslims unless we had become afraid of them? Would good-hearted Americans allow the children of asylees at our borders to be separated from their parents? Would we allow them to create more and more for-profit prisons to house the thousands of immigrants incarcerated around the country unless we agreed with them on some level? Such power corrupts the soul of our nation's police departments and the racist systems of mass incarceration. I have to wonder if the Contra Costa County Sheriff, David Livingston, would be as cavalier as he is at the 8th death inside a Contra Costa jail just this last week. The 8th death in the last 2 years inside of his jails, if he too wasn't a tool of the empire. But here we are again, keeping faith in the face of an empire we ourselves live within. Like the Maccabean Jews within the Greek Empire, like the Jesus movement within the Roman Empire, who would rather die in the arenas than participate in the military, like the Druids who stood against the Roman troops in Anglesey, Britannia, like the Prophet Muhammad and the Muslims who traveled from Mecca to Medina to escape certain death for demanding equal rights for those oppressed in their society. We too, religious people, are often the last resistance to empire. Today we are here to show that we will retain our humanity. We will retain our faith in the gods and goddesses that we know how to pray to, and against the powers of death, war, and injustice. We're here once again to remind them, as we remind ourselves, that we were created for more than to be fodder for the wars of aggression. We were created to recognize the image of the divine in one another, and therefore we belong to each other even in the face of threats and abuses of empire, and especially when we live and resist within the borders of that empire. And we're here again to reclaim everyone's humanity, to hold up a mirror to our neighbors and family members who work inside this and other parts of the imperial systems of weapon making and environmental degradation. We're here to ask them and the emperor with no clothes why they put their trust in violence and fear. And just like Jesus of Nazareth, who always brought along his friends, the women, the sex workers, the dispossessed, we're here to introduce those working in the petrochemical military industrial complex how the very presence of their industries are killing indigenous peoples the world over, and to expose how our government and Wall Street banksters' $5 trillion of subsidization of the fossil fuels industry is literally robbing the poor of enough to eat, so that the richest 0.1% can continue to divert more than half of our economic profits to their own pockets or control. And so as a part of our resistance, we are also here to ask questions of ourselves and our nation. When did our non-proliferation treaties make it okay to sell nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia, as is being suggested today, or Pakistan or India or anyone in the past? When did we become the arbiters for who gets to lead the countries of Venezuela or Haiti or Iran? And why did we Americans allow these systems of power over others to become so normalized? Money, power, fear, control. We are here to remind ourselves and our neighbors that each of us were created for more than these age-old demonic powers. Pope Francis has argued that any country that maintains a nuclear arsenal creates nothing but a false sense of security, saying that total disarmament is the only acceptable solution. Total disarmament. Our fears of a nuclear holocaust are only rivaled these days by our genuine fear of climate chaos. The environmental catastrophe being created by many of these same industries has led us to the brink of dozens of tipping points seen today. We've added terms like polar vortex, bomb, cyclone, winter storm Wesley, 1,000-year floods, and insect apocalypse to our vocabulary. We've known that we're transforming our climate since the 1970s, and yet in 2018, our emissions from fossil fuels surged to a record high of 33.1 billion tons. Only a few days ago, on April 15th, the global actions of Extinction Rebellion was starting to make the empire take notice that their constituents will not go away without resisting. And yet no one is talking about how we are the largest historical emitter of such gases, actively denying the science of climate chaos that has created the 3-year drought in the Central American Triangle, that has created the thousands of ecological refugees fleeing a region where our own foreign policy has supported and trained the armed criminals in the gangs that have threatened their lives. We Americans, we are the source of the many intersections of their oppression in their home countries, only to treat them like animals if they make it to our borders seeking asylum. What have we become? Our own young people have awakened to the threats of climate chaos and the increase in farm crop failures the last few years. Many are also just awakening to the intersections of the threats of global engineering and nuclear proliferation. Today, we live under the threat of multiple catastrophic failures of our so-called civilizations. We hear of young people putting off having children because of the uncertainties of what kind of world they would be bringing children into. How do we retain our own sanity and ability to act and create a new tomorrow? Where do we look for hope? The reasons that we are inspired by Moses, the Maccabees, Honi the Circle Maker, Jesus of Nazareth, Muhammad, Buddha, Harriet Tubman, Gandhi, Cesar Chavez, Thomas Merton, Dorothy Day, Dr. King, native leaders like Geronimo, and the many nations and confederations who confronted the settler colonialisms of our foreparents, was because we recognized that these sheroes and heroes of faith were good at staying faithful even unto death. It didn't matter if they died in the desert escaping slavery, or standing up to Antiochus Epiphanes, or continuing to cry out to the skies until the water came, or if they died in old age having led a movement of justice and enlightenment that was successful. Even when they died on a Roman cross along with others guilty of sedition against the inhumanities of the empires of their day, what we see in them was a strength of fortitude that we know that we need today, and that we see in those around us in our better moments. It is this kind of soul force that we saw in Gandhi that we want to see in ourselves. Given all the forms and systems of oppression that we recognize around us, encircling those that we love around the world, we have to do more than look for what is politically possible. We have to start to act as if our actions matter, because they are the difference between mass extinctions and a livable planet. We have to keep faith, amen? We have to remain faithful even when it gets hard. Amen? Amen? Ashe? Yes, we have to stay faithful in our struggle against empire because it seeks to take over every part of our lives. We have to keep faith with those trapped in mass incarceration, with those waiting at the border to receive the right of asylum, with those who continue to be targeted by the police or ICE, with those whose peoples are being annihilated by the empire the world over. And we have to be the saints today that we have looked to for inspiration in the past. It's your job to be those saints today. We have to keep faith with those who have gone before, those who have showed up at this rallies in years past, those who may have died and not able to make it any longer, if only to preserve hope in the potential humanity of the guards who twice a year put on SWAT team gear and are trained to protect the lab at all costs from little old ladies and pacifist preachers who have to keep faith even for them. We have to help them reclaim their humanity too. We're here again to say that even though we live in the shadow of empire, we're here to say that we will not become the tools of imperial economics, racism, and the empire's war machine. We have to decolonize our own hearts so that when we win, and we will win, siblings of God, we have to decolonize our hearts so we don't mistakenly take the places within the empire that others are currently playing. Here's the key. We aren't called to be successful for the sake of success or progress or even for the sake of making the world a better place. We're called to be faithful like the servants and prophets of old, even unto death, because we too need to be faithful, leaving the success to God alone. Union leader Nicholas Klein in 1914 provided a version of the misattributed quote that is most likely a combination of Klein's 1914 speech combined with an attempt to summarize Gandhi's nonviolent doctrine and philosophy. It was true for the Union and is true for us today when he said, "My friends, in this story you have a history of this entire movement. First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, and then they attack you and want to burn you, and then they will build monuments to you. And that is what is going to happen to the Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America." That is what it means to be human beings, not just human doings. Our faithfulness today is an expression of our loyal questioning of the systems of power over others. Our allegiance to the God of compassion questions the very foundations of white supremacy, of white nationalism, of patriarchal misogyny, and demands an equality that exposes American exceptionalism as the idolatry that it continues to be. Americans can be better precisely because of our values of chesed, of loving kindness, caring, compassion, belonging. We will do this in the liminal spaces today, in our conversations between the stations on the cross, as we walk today, in our drumming, in our circling, and in our showing up. That is the fidelity that we are called to. So continue to show up, retain your freedom, and free others. Just as hurt people hurt others, free people free others. And even as we walk along the street today, we remind those around us that we are here because the power of love demands it of us. For the vocation of our loving God compels us to be all that we've been created to be, not to shrink back from our full humanity, to show that we live as equals with others around the world. And it's in that solidarity that we can continue to be the people of God that challenges all that threatens our common humanity and even the earth itself. Amen.
I'm Janet Gibson, and I want to again welcome everybody here. You know, I see so many faces that over the years you've been here, and you've been in many other places. I know our event is just one that you participate in and that you work for. But I do want to thank, particularly to start out, just thank the people, our musicians, our dancers, our speakers, have been working for several months on this, and we're so grateful. Newman Center, who lets them meet every week to plan this without charge. You know, we have a lot of gifts given to us, and we're going to lead up to your giving. But I do want to say something. Where's Chris? Chris. Did I lose him? Raise your hand. The young, you know, Chris, who read Isaiah. Where's Isaiah? Oh, he's way down there with his dad. He's going, that's all right. Everybody don't, he's using, but Isaiah, you were wonderful. And I just want to ask, how many of you, let's give a clap for him. Raise your hand if you've seen Greta Thunberg. Have you seen her speech? This was her speech. And she's a young girl from Sweden. You know, when she was 13, her teacher taught her about the climate and what was happening. And she decided she had to go and do something. And so she's been going in front of the Swedish parliament. And her parents don't give her permission to miss school. But they do support her in many, many ways. But she goes one day a week. And then she's been invited all over the world, and that was one of the speeches that she gave. So, look, if you have YouTube or if somebody can help you, you can hear her again. But our youth, and let me just say this: I'm a former teacher. We have students, and I bet every one of you in your community, there are kids, particularly at the high school age, that are trying to be part of this. Particularly the climate is the big issue for them. And so tomorrow's Earth Day, but a few weeks ago, Greta and all over the world, high school students were leaving class to march someplace to go and make a statement that they cared and that they wanted their community to make the decisions for climate change and for sustainable, use of our property, our land, our parks. Our school district in Alameda, they actually told the students if they would leave their classes to do this, they couldn't go to the prom. If they were in athletics, they couldn't go to they couldn't play on their team for several weeks. Punishment. But what I'm saying is, check to see what's happening in your community, because you're the folks that can go to a school board meeting and say, you need to work out something better than this. You need to somehow work with the kids and support them, because this is so important. So let me just say again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you all. And now is the time that we're going to ask you if you'll share your portion of your savings with us. We share this with the Livermore Conversion Project also, and I think this is the one great opportunity you have. We're going to have some music while the collection goes on. If you write a check, write it to EPI. It's a deductible, tax deductible check. And while they're just getting started, I want to read a poem, because that song, the Irish song, where's Sister Maureen? Sister Maureen's out there. Do you know, where is she?
It's the county down.
There she is. Oh, she. Well, Sister Maureen, she's been the person doing a great job with the East Bay Sanctuary Covenant, and she's from Ireland, and she just she was singing that song and just enjoying it so much. But let me just read this. By the way, some of your money will help not only support this, but support the newsletter we put out. And here is a very short poem by a radical Marxist priest. No matter why or what about the shame in Abu Ghraib or that of Auschwitz, and all the children with their bloated, hungry deaths, in darkest moments when despair seems to engulf known universe, and all the news not fit to print decry man's outrage, still, somewhere, within a song is born. A dirge at times, an elegy most days, for flower or tree, for life needlessly shed in endless patterns of despair and ruthlessness. And yet, there is a verse which urges peace and joy and the beauty of the day. Amen. So please.
From the dances of universal peace comes this prayer to the spirit of peace, which includes the words mir, miru, mir. In Russian, peace is mir, miru is earth, and peace is mir. Repeat after me. Spirit of peace, to thy cause we give our strength. Spirit of peace, to thy cause we give our strength. That love may reign and war may cease. That love may reign and war may cease. Mir, miru, mir. And sung, let's get a note. Spirit of peace, to thy cause we give our strength. Repeat. Spirit of peace, to thy cause we give our strength, that love may reign and war may cease. Mir, miru, mir, that
war shall cease.
War shall cease. Mir, miru, mir. Spirit of
To your cause.
to your cause we give our strength, that love may reign and war may cease. Mir, miru, mir. And one last time so they can hear us. Spirit of
To thy cause.
to thy cause
give our strength.
give our strength,
That love may
that
reign.
love may
And war
reign,
shall
and
cease.
war shall
Miru, miru,
cease. Mir, miru, mir. Thank you.
I'm here representing the Muslim Community Center in Pleasanton.
Assalamu alaikum.
Greetings of peace to all of you. Is it okay for hold it up here? Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go very short here. The gentleman, a couple of speeches before me, I think laid out in very comprehensive terms everything. So I'd like to start with a little message from the Quran, which is pertaining to love for refugees and immigrants. So I'll start a little bit with the Arabic, and then translate to the best of my ability. The translation I have here is probably too formal, so I'll venture it on my own. والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. So here's my attempt at the meaning here. Those who were in the land before they had their homes and they had faith, they love those who come to them as refugees, and they prefer the needs of the refugees above their own, even though they may be in dire poverty. And whatever is given to the refugees in preference of their own, they have no ill feeling. They're very happy to prefer the refugees' needs over their own. And whoever is saved from the covetousness or the greediness or the avarice of his own soul, they are the ones who are truly successful. And I'll share a little a prayer from. There are prayers of different prophets or messengers of God in the Quran. I chose a couple from Moses, peace be upon him. Musa, we call him Musa in Arabic. Again, I'll start with the Arabic. فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. So a little background of this is when Moses had to flee for his life from Egypt when the Pharaoh was planning to kill him. So he fled into the land of Midian. That's the Arabic, I'm not sure the English pronunciation of that. And then basically, so he was a refugee himself. He's penniless, homeless. So at this point he comes into this land and he sees two ladies holding back their sheep because the shepherds won't give them access to the water. So Moses is known to be a very strong individual. He basically takes their sheep, waters the sheep for them, and then he comes back. He asks them, why don't you go and water your sheep just like the others? And they say, our father is an old man, implying that they don't have strength to basically face these shepherds, and so they have to wait until they leave. So when he comes back under the shade, he makes this prayer to God. So he says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin. So any kind of good, Lord, that you send down on me, I am totally desperate for any kind of good that you send down for me. So this is the prayer of Moses. And the other prayer is when God commands him to go to Pharaoh. When God commands him to go to Pharaoh and basically, bring the message of God to Pharaoh, essentially, and also the salvation of the Jewish people to be saved from the oppression of the Pharaoh. So so this is you can imagine you as an individual being asked to go to Hitler, unarmed, without any kind of power, and go and face him by yourself. So this is what God asked Moses to do. And his prayer when he heard this command from God is, قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي اشدد به أزري وأشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا. So the prayer he makes to his Lord is, Lord, expand for me my breast, and ease for me my task, and untie the knot from my tongue, that they may understand my speech. And appoint for me a minister from my family, Haran, which is Harun my brother. Increase through him my strength, and let him share my task, that we may exalt you much, we may praise you much, and we may remember you much. For you are the ever-seeing. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Larson Beville, and I'm with the Livermore Conversion Project. And I feel like this morning has, just in all the music and the words that people have spoken, has been our call to action. It's that time when we leave this spot and we move up the road, but the whole morning I have felt really compelled by all I've heard to move forward and to continue on in the struggle with all of you who have been, many of you here for decades. It's a beautiful sight to see you here this morning. You're people with big hearts, and you've got a commitment to peace and justice that is sustaining, and I'm so grateful for that in my life to have you here. I thank you. Thank you for keeping the faith today, for continuing on the road to peace and justice. We will be leaving here shortly. We will be taking the walk up to the gates of Livermore Nuclear Weapons Lab, and along the way we will see the Stations of the Cross, and we will stop and pause there, and then move on to the next one. I also wanted to remind those of you who are planning on doing civil disobedience today that there's a sign-up sheet over here under the Ecumenical Peace Institute banner. Please sign in there. And then after the action, you are invited to a community gathering hosted by Tri-Valley Cares. The information about that gathering is on the bottom of this piece of paper, and it's from 10 to 12 o'clock. It's an opportunity for all of us to share with each other our hopes and our dreams and our actions that we're going to be taking for the future. Thank you very much.